In Psalm 142, verse 3, there is a quiet, almost exhausted confession that might perfectly describe the season you are walking through right now. When my spirit grows faint within me, it is you who watch over my way. In the path where I walk, they have hidden a snare for me. There is a very specific kind of tiredness that doesn't come from a lack of sleep. It comes from trying so hard, praying so consistently, carrying your responsibilities faithfully, and yet nothing seems to move forward. You look at your life, your family, your peace of mind, and it feels as though your feet are heavy. It feels like there is an invisible wall you just can't seem to break through. You probably don't talk about it much because it is hard to explain. People mean well. They tell you to just have faith, but they don't see the opposition you face every single day. Yet, deep down, in the quietness of your own thoughts, you've started to wonder, Lord, what am I missing? Why is there so much resistance? What is standing in the way? If you are feeling stuck, drained by a battle you can't even see with your natural eyes, I want you to breathe, slow down, and stay here with me for a few minutes. Because today we are not just going to pray. We are going to ask God to turn on the light, to reveal exactly what is hindering your progress, and to clear the path before you. Often, the hardest part of feeling stuck is the quiet guilt that comes with it. You retrace your steps in your mind. You wonder if you made a wrong decision, if you didn't pray hard enough, or if God has somehow quietly stepped back from your life. It is exhausting to fight a battle when you don't even know who or what you are fighting. But the Apostle Paul gives us a profound lens to view these seasons of struggle. In Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12, he writes a truth that changes everything. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Let that sink in for a moment. Not against flesh and blood. This means that the constant tension in your home, the sudden and unexplained roadblocks in your career, that heavy cloud of anxiety that drops over your chest without warning. These are not just random moments of bad luck. And more importantly, they are not proof that you are failing at life. They are evidence of an unseen resistance. There is a very real, quiet opposition that specifically targets people who are trying to walk closely with God. When you don't understand that the root of your hindrance is spiritual, you end up fighting the wrong things. You fight your circumstances. You get frustrated with the people around you. You become bitterly disappointed with yourself. You carry a heavy, isolating burden. But the moment God reveals that there is an invisible barrier, the confusion lifts. The scripture doesn't tell us about this spiritual struggle to frighten us. It tells us this to give us clarity. It explains the heaviness. The enemy does not put massive roadblocks in front of someone who is going nowhere. If there is unusual resistance in your life right now, it is often because there is a significant breakthrough waiting on the other side. You are not doing everything wrong. You are simply walking through a contested territory. And this is the part that nobody teaches you in church, because Jesus didn't leave us without a map for this. He encoded the exact blueprint. How to identify what is blocking you. How to dismantle the resistance in your finances, your health, your relationships, inside his parables. On purpose. Hidden in plain sight. Most people read those stories their entire lives and never find it. The ones who do, the invisible wall starts to move. I left something in the first pinned comment below this video. A gift for the person who is tired of hitting the same wall and knows deep down there is a layer they haven't accessed yet. Go check it right now before we continue. It won't stay there long. There is a moment in the Old Testament that perfectly captures this feeling of being overwhelmed, of looking around and feeling entirely surrounded by things you cannot control. In 2 Kings chapter 6, the prophet Elisha and his young servant wake up early one morning, only to find their city completely encircled by a hostile enemy army. The servant's reaction is deeply human. It is exactly how you and I react when everything seems to go wrong at once. Verse 15 says he looks out at the horses and chariots, and he cries out in a panic, "Oh no, my lord! What shall we do?" Have you been there? Have you had those mornings where you wake up, look at the reality of your situation, the unexpected expenses, the doctor's report, the silent tension in your home, the sheer weight of your daily survival, and your heart just sinks? You feel completely outnumbered by your problems. You look at the barriers in your life, and the only reasonable response seems to be despair. But Elisha's response is breathtaking. He doesn't panic. He doesn't rush to make a desperate escape plan. Instead, he prays a very simple, profoundly quiet prayer in verse 17. Lord, I pray, open his eyes so that he may see. The Bible says the Lord opened the young man's eyes, and suddenly he looked up to see the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. God's angelic army had been there the entire time. The protection was already in place. Notice something very important here. Elisha didn't pray for God to remove the enemy first. He prayed for God to change his servant's vision. Sometimes, the thing hindering your progress isn't just the obstacle standing in front of you. Sometimes, the hindrance is that fear, exhaustion, and trauma have blinded you to the presence of God surrounding you. When we ask God to reveal what is blocking our path, we must also ask Him to reveal who is standing with us. The barrier only feels insurmountable until God opens your eyes to see that His presence in your life is far greater than the invisible opposition trying to hold you back. When we think of invisible barriers, our minds usually go straight to external attacks. We think of closed doors, financial setbacks, or the sudden conflicts that arise out of nowhere. But spiritual opposition is rarely that loud or obvious. Most of the time, the enemy works through slow, quiet accumulation. He doesn't need to completely destroy your life overnight. He just needs to make your spirit too heavy to move forward. In Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1, there is a gentle but profound instruction. It says, "Let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us." Twarchinquarchen. Notice those two distinct phrases. Sin is one thing, but everything that hinders is something else entirely. A hindrance is not always a sin. Sometimes a hindrance is an old, unresolved pain you are still trying to manage on your own. Sometimes it is the heavy burden of trying to fix everyone else's problems while your own soul is quietly starving. Other times it is a lingering anxiety from a past season that has convinced you that the future will only bring more disappointment. The enemy loves to weigh you down with responsibilities and fears that God never actually asked you to carry. This is exactly why King David prayed such a vulnerable prayer in Psalm 139, verses 23 and 24. "Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." David was asking for divine illumination. He was saying, "Lord, show me what is slowing me down. Reveal the unseen weights." You may be feeling exhausted right now, not because you lack strength or faith, but because you are dragging emotional and spiritual luggage that simply does not belong in this new season of your life. An invisible barrier can be a mindset. It can be a deep-seated fear of failure that keeps you paralyzed. We need God to gently bring these hidden weights into His light, because once you finally see the burden for what it truly is, you can finally choose to drop it. That right there, seeing it clearly for the first time, that is the moment everything changes. And that is exactly what Jesus was pointing to. Not on the surface of His words, underneath them, in the hidden layer that most people never reach because nobody ever showed them where to look. The people who find it don't just feel better. Their finances shift. Their health turns. The relationships they had written off start to breathe again, because they finally stopped fighting the symptom and found the root. If you haven't checked the first pinned comment yet, do it right now. What is waiting there, including a bonus I added specifically for the person who made it this far, was built for exactly the battle you are describing in your own life. This won't be available indefinitely. The ones who act on it today are the ones who stop hitting the same wall tomorrow. Have you ever considered that the roadblock in front of you might not be an attack, but an act of divine protection? This is a layer of our spiritual journey that is very hard to navigate when you are already feeling tired. We are so conditioned to fight every obstacle, assuming that every delay is the enemy trying to stop our progress. But what if the invisible barrier frustrating you right now is actually God's grace, gently keeping you away from a space you were never meant to enter? In the book of Acts, chapter 16, verses 6 and 7, we see a fascinating moment in the life of the Apostle Paul. The text says that Paul and his companions traveled throughout the region, having been kept by the Holy Spirit from preaching the word in the province of Asia. And when they tried to enter another region called Bithynia, the Spirit of Jesus would not allow them to. Paul was trying to do something good. He was trying to move forward with a noble purpose. But he was met with a closed door. It wasn't a lack of faith. It wasn't a spiritual attack from the enemy. It was the Spirit of God saying, "Not here, not this way." We cause ourselves so much unnecessary exhaustion by trying to force open doors that God Himself has locked for our safety. You might be grieving a plan that fell apart, a connection that suddenly faded, or an opportunity that just wouldn't work out no matter how hard you pushed. It leaves you feeling confused, inadequate, and rejected. But sometimes God's rejection is simply His redirection. The Lord sees the hidden snares that lie down the road you want to travel, and He loves you enough to block your path. This is why asking God to reveal what is hindering you is so deeply important. If the resistance is from the enemy, we need God's strength to stand firm and fight. But if the resistance is God closing a door, we need the spiritual maturity to let it stay closed. Lord, please give us the quiet wisdom to know the difference. Give us the peace to stop fighting your protective hand and help us rest in the knowledge that the path you are paving is safer than the one we are trying to force open. When you finally reach the point of admitting that you cannot figure everything out on your own, something beautiful happens. There is a strange, quiet relief in realizing you do not have to decode every single barrier. The mental fatigue of constantly analyzing your life, trying to find out exactly what is wrong or why you are stuck, is a remarkably heavy burden. In 2 Chronicles chapter 20, King Jehoshaphat finds himself facing a massive, terrifying coalition of enemies. He is completely trapped. He has no military strategy left to rely on. And his prayer in verse 12 is one of the most honest and deeply human moments in the entire Bible. He looks up to heaven and says, "We have no power to face this vast army that is attacking us. We do not know what to do, but our eyes are upon you." Have you ever reached that exact place? The point where your mind is simply too tired to formulate another plan, where you have tried all the logical solutions, you have done everything you knew how to do, and yet the wall in front of you refuses to move. Society tells us that not knowing what to do is a weakness, but in the spiritual realm, saying, "Lord, I don't know what to do," is not a failure of your faith. It is the true beginning of genuine surrender. When we cannot clearly see what is hindering us, our natural human instinct is to panic. We thrash around, we try harder, we exhaust ourselves pushing against immovable things. But God's instruction in the face of impossible barriers is usually the exact opposite of our instinct. In Exodus chapter 14, verse 14, Moses tells a terrified people who are standing right in front of an impassable sea, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Being still does not mean you are giving up. It means you are finally trusting that God is already at work in the unseen spaces, dismantling the barriers you cannot reach. It means silencing the anxious noise in your mind long enough to feel His peace. You do not have to break down the wall by your own strength. You just need to rest and fix your eyes on Him. If you are still here with me listening in these final moments of our time together, it tells me something very important about where you are right now. It tells me that your soul is genuinely searching for rest. You are not just looking for a quick motivational fix or an empty promise. You are looking for real, lasting peace in the middle of a very real, very silent battle. And if this conversation has resonated with the heavy, unspoken things in your heart today, I want to invite you to subscribe to our channel and walk alongside us every day. We are building a quiet space here, a place to breathe, to find comfort, and to remember that you do not have to carry the weight of your life all by yourself. Because there is a profound comfort in knowing you are not walking through the wilderness alone. I know exactly how isolating it feels when you are carrying a heavy weight on the inside, yet having to smile and function normally on the outside for the rest of the world. I know the quiet frustration of waking up, doing your absolute best, and still feeling like the ground beneath your feet simply won't let you move forward. The sensation of being stuck, of hitting that invisible wall day after day, can slowly drain the hope right out of you. It makes you feel as though you have been entirely abandoned in the waiting. But we have to remember what the scriptures have shown us today. The barriers you are facing are not proof that God has left you. Often, they are the very places where His most profound work is happening in secret. You see, we are so intensely focused on the wall standing in front of us, but God is focused on the foundation beneath us. He is taking His time to remove the internal things that would cause us to collapse once we finally step into our new season. Just because you cannot see the progress with your natural eyes does not mean the path isn't being actively cleared for you. The delay is not a denial. The resistance is not a rejection. But for that invisible barricade to finally fall, for the Lord to truly remove what is hindering you, there is one final, critical shift that must happen in your heart. In fact, what God is preparing to do in the unseen realm right now requires you to finally let go of the very last thing you are desperately trying to control. The hardest part of asking God to reveal what is hindering your progress is that you must be fully prepared for His gentle, honest answer. Sometimes, the thing blocking your way is indeed the enemy, and God will give you the unwavering grace to withstand the storm. Sometimes, the barrier is a divinely closed door, and the Lord is asking you to trust His profound protection over your life. But very often, the final, most stubborn hindrance we face is our own grip. It is our desperate, exhausting need to control the timeline of our deliverance. We want the breakthrough right now on our exact terms. Yet, true spiritual maturity is reaching that quiet, surrendered place where you can look at the immovable wall in your life, take a deep, slow breath, and finally say, Lord, if this wall is meant to fall, I trust your hands to bring it down. And if it is meant to stay, I trust your grace to give me peace while I wait. That is where the silent transformation happens. The exact moment you stop fighting God's timeline, the heavy emotional exhaustion begins to lift from your shoulders. You realize that the ultimate goal is not just to break through every barrier. The goal is to be deeply, intimately held by the one who controls the path. You do not need to decode every single spiritual attack. You just need to know that the Lord is carefully watching over your way, just as the psalmist promised us at the very beginning of our time together. The unseen resistance is His to dismantle. You have carried this weight for entirely too long. Let Him fight it. Rest your tired mind. If these words brought a sense of quiet comfort to your soul today, please follow our channel so we can continue to walk together. I also want to ask you to share this message with 5 people. There is someone you know who is silently fighting an invisible battle today, and they desperately need to hear that they are not walking alone. Before you go, leave a sincere comment below. Tell me what heavy burden you are choosing to let go of today, or suggest a theme you would like us to talk about in our next video. Remember this as you step back into your day. What stands in front of you will never be greater than who stands beside you. May the Lord grant you deep, unshakable peace tonight.